Hello, everyone. This is our last session of the long event. So today, in the last session, we'll talk about children and regulation on TikTok, considering all the aspects that we have discussed earlier today. So we have, again, amazing, great scholars from all over the world, from East Asia, Middle East, Europe, and also South America. We are very excited to have you here and also learn from you about what should be needed, what is needed to protect children's safety and also to ensure their well-being and also the agency in relation to TikTok's cultures. So the first presenter today is Tom Dibon and Catalina GOANTA. Their paper is about children as commodities, ethnographic observation and legal implications of child influencer monetization on TikTok. So I believe, Catalina, you are the presenter. So yeah,
Yes.
Floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. And first of all, thank you, Crystal, Jin, and Naomi for organizing this fantastic event. It's really a delight to be present in this conversation. I'm just going to share my screen and start with the presentation, which is a very nice and what I hope you will also find a very nice and fruitful collaboration between myself and Tom Dibon. So we're trying to bridge two very specific disciplines. So media studies, particularly from the perspective of ethnography, and also legal studies, which is actually my background. So what we are going to do today is talk about four things. First of all, give you a little bit of context. I know that you have been discussing a lot of context. We have a different angle, which we hope is going to contribute also to this conversation. The context of why child influencers, and particularly on TikTok, are an important phenomenon to look into. We have some thoughts also on a methodology setup that we are currently developing that we would like to share with you, and then some initial reflections on ethnographic observations, and particularly the legal component of our research, which will lead to some very basic takeaways. Because I need to emphasize this very strongly because of the fact that we are starting up this multidisciplinary collaboration. We have been in the past weeks really exchanging a lot of views and a lot of perspectives to bring together our respective expertises, because Tom has a lot of expertise with working on ethnographic TikTok, so to say, and I have been looking at social media governance in the past years as well. Why are child influencers a thing on TikTok? Let me share with you some of the background that I have, particularly looking at child influencers in the Netherlands. So YouTube, but also Instagram have become really big places for parents to share and also monetize the activity of their children. There has been, for instance, a comeback of vlogging channels. I don't know if this is a worldwide trend for YouTube, but this is definitely happening in the Netherlands. But in addition to that, what is very important to remark is that according to the Influencer Marketing Hub, as of 2023, TikTok has surpassed Instagram when it comes to the amount that is spent on influencer marketing on the platform. So we note that when it comes to content monetization, business models that are facilitated by platforms that are nurtured also by creators, that benefit creators because they can make a lot of money out of that. TikTok is really leading the way here. Very important also to keep in mind, and this is the monetization angle that we hope to contribute with also to the broader discussion on content monetization. Influencer marketing is only one of the business models that are relevant in this context. So influencer marketing being, the advertising dimension that happens very much also off platform, where you just pay a creator for advertising purposes. But TikTok is also very important because of the fact that it has grown very much in its own internal revenue when it comes to the tokenization, so the microtransactions that are available with the live option. So this is just, I'm not going to go into great detail here. It's going to be in the paper, and I also have some additional materials if you're interested. But this is just to set the scene and to see that monetization really means business, literally, and that is a very important consideration for us and for our research. particularly if we look at the legal angle or the regulatory angle, which I also know that Crystal has been writing about in the past years. We see that there has been quite a lot of attention dedicated to the phenomenon of sharenting. So Stacy Steinberg has been writing about that as well. There have been some other books, and I believe that there will also be some presentations in this panel that will focus on privacy more than anything else. But apart from that, there are also some additional legal dimensions that are a little bit under-addressed. And for us, that particular dimension is that of consent and legal capacity. I will go into what legal capacity is in one of my last slides, but this is just to keep in mind that children are basically controlled by their parents from a legal perspective, since they are considered to have limited legal capacity. Now, I shared here together with Tom a couple of regulatory activities because the regulators around the world are very interested in influencer activities, particularly pertaining to children, and mostly these have a labor dimension or they will have a privacy dimension. And this is once more confirming that legal capacity should be a little bit more prevalent in these debates. So in our paper, what we want to do is we want to combine the ethnographic dimension and the legal dimension in an empirical study to really understand how children are commodified on TikTok, and also understand what kind of implications we see for the business models that this type of commodification entails from the particular perspective of consent. So consent meaning the agency that we also heard about earlier in the earlier panel, the agency that a child might have in the transaction that they might be involved in with respect to their commercial activity. With the methodology, we wanted to have an ethnographic analysis of 10 accounts. So we're now actually, so we proposed 10 accounts in the beginning, and then we started thinking about perhaps expanding that. We initially focused on accounts that really relay a story of motherhood. And so it's very much focused on a gender, a very specific representation of gender. And what we wanted to do is have a comparison between Israeli accounts and also US accounts. Although we acknowledge that there is some degree of overrepresentation of US influencers in media research, and particularly in legal research, it does remain a very important jurisdiction because a lot of the platforms that we're talking about, and TikTok actually is, of course, an exception, are very much US based, and that brings with it a very interesting narrative of platform power. So we want to make this comparison between a very, overrepresented jurisdiction, but then also an underrepresented jurisdiction for which we chose Israel. And when it comes to the legal analysis, we will explore the idea of legal capacity, and we will also tackle this from a general perspective. So just relating to the legal principles that are very common to a lot of jurisdictions around the world, but also just give very specific examples of how the law treats this idea of consent and legal capacity, particularly in Californian and Israeli law. And we hope that, and we absolutely believe that the combination of these two analyses can really bring some novelty to the debate and inform the discussions around the presence of children in content monetization as an industry. Here we have an overview of the selected accounts, and we can see that we have selected the accounts that range from accounts pertaining to children at first sight, but then also the accounts pertaining to discussion channels, so all sorts of commentary channels that really focus on the lives of influencers who expose their families and who use their families for monetization purposes. And as you can see here, we still will most likely add some additional accounts. From an ethnographic perspective, what we want to understand is how these monetization models that we saw at the very beginning, where we will try to track them down And we would like to see, what kind of diversification of business models are we talking about on TikTok? Is indeed influencer marketing now being very much used by such channels like motherhood accounts and also child influencer accounts? And then when it comes to TikTok in particular, of course, there are also these tokenization models, but we really are curious to see what we will find in our ethnographic observations with respect to the portfolio of content monetization that creators now use nowadays. Particularly,
sorry, Catalina, to interrupt. You have a 1.5 minutes wrap up.
Yeah, I have my timer here. Yeah, thank you very much. So particularly, we also have commercial interests and non-commercial values that we at first sight have observed. And from a commercial interest perspective, we see this parent-child interaction playing a very important role because it tells us the story of control in the relationship. And another very interesting finding so far that we will look into is the idea of non-commercial values. And we found an influencer account in Israel that was very much using children to promote religion. We have this model that we are going to use, the role of children, so main characters, co-stars, and supporting characters. And when it comes to the legal insights, so as I mentioned, legal capacity being this ability to actually participate in the market economy, we are going to try to understand whether the law still promotes the protection of children through the framework of legal capacity, or they are actually being trapped in these very, very old rules. So the takeaways in the last 20 seconds, we want to really build on existing research. And the most important aspect is to really understand how we can bring together the two disciplines that I mentioned to shed light on the business practices of accounts that use children for content monetization on TikTok. Thank you very much. We look forward to the discussion. As mentioned before, I will unfortunately have a small emergency and will have to leave you sooner than expected, but Tom will be taking the questions. Thank you very much for allowing us to participate in this wonderful event.
Thank you so much, Catalina, and we'll miss you. And also a very wonderful discussion about the child influence and monetization and also legal aspect on TikTok. So now we are moving to East Asia, Vietnamese case. Dr. Viet To Lee, am I pronouncing your name correctly? Sorry, from Ban Lang University. His paper is about TikTok regulations in Vietnam between the risks and opportunities. So over to you.
Thank you for Gergely and everyone for letting me join a very exciting conference. And now I would like to introduce about how TikTok regulated in Vietnam. And let me share my presentation. So this is a paper I'm working with Dr. Trường Minh Lý Lê in Van Dam University also about the TikTok regulation in Vietnam. So the first thing we would like to say something about the Vietnamese children online, a lot of background about Vietnamese children, how they're working on the internet. And as you can see on the screen, 87 of Vietnamese children aged from 12 to 17 years access the internet every day. And although TikTok is limited the age from the 13 years, however, a lot of children using a fake ID to access to the TikTok and see the short video on there. And a lot of Vietnamese children often use internet for learning or entertainment or sharing information or shopping or also live streaming also. And according to the Ministry of Information and Communication of Vietnam, more than 70% of children have had an unwanted experience such as personal information leak on the internet. And TikTok in Vietnam, in the past, Vietnamese attitude toward TikTok embedded in the escalating political tension between China and Vietnam. And just explain why in the past, TikTok very slow on the number of use in Vietnam, but the situation is changing recently, and TikTok use rate in Vietnam have been growing rapidly over the past few years, especially after the COVID-19. And TikTok have officially been Vietnamese favorite short video platform and solidified in its position as the fourth biggest social media platform in Vietnam in Q4 2021. And as of 2023, Vietnam has the second largest TikTok audience in the Asia Pacific region. And our research question about what is the nature of Vietnamese authority discourses on the regulation of TikTok content aimed at children between 8 to 18 years old. And we look on how the Vietnamese authority regulated the TikTok, and the Vietnamese government has set up various law and regulation to the govern social platform, including TikTok. And in repeat attempt to pursue Vietnamese citizens to turn to the home ground social networking site, the authorities have developed various tactics to deal with the foreign platform, including TikTok. The authority have used a selection of instruments like terrorism as a fertile ground for negative and toxic information, so to come up with them and call on all companies doing business yet to stop advertising on social media until this platform find a way to halt the publication of toxic anti-government information. And in the views of the authority, toxic information includes advertisement or contraband merchandise and state secret. So TikTok always said that it removes, and they said it removed 2.43 million video uploaded by Vietnamese youth in the first quarter of 2023 for violating its community guideline. And they also removed for violating guidelines related to the sexual act involving minor or inciting violence, but also for frightening contents, harassment, bullying, suicide, and other. And TikTok Vietnam also said it operates its guidelines, which took effect from the April 2023 to be more transparent about its rule and how its work enforce them. So for answer the research question, based on the background about the regulations about the TikTok use in children in Vietnam, we use some keyword to search on the Google like TikTok plus content regulation children and setting a frame time from the first of January 2020 to 30 of April 2023, and the future results related to the overseas TikTok content management. And we also looking on the article or the news article which cite the discourse from the Vietnam authority related to the content management on TikTok, and we filtered 120 results, and we use critical discourse analysis and the analysis of relation between the power and knowledge in the production and distribution of the discourse. And we also use the term of Foucault related about regimes of trust, which is the result of scientific discourse and institution reinforced through a systematic normalization of the law, evaluate and offer different means of punishment and rewarding according to the Foucault. And by this way, we also try to understand by using a Foucault discourse analysis, and we go with the 5 steps in using it as you can see on the screens. And we, as a result, also we are continuing to analyze, but for some very beginning of result, we can see this is some discourse. It's very focused on the harmfuls of TikTok, and it's also focused on how the authority can regulate about the TikTok. It's focused a lot about the risk of children online. It's not concerned a lot about the right of children or something. And they also rarely mentioned about how we can teach. In other words, how we can make the children more digital literacy to understand about what is the right thing and what is the wrong thing on social media in general and on TikTok. And this is some quote we get from the data when we filter by Google search and try to, when we analyze by using this critical discourse analysis. And recently, it's also saw a lot in the sick violence of TikTok in Vietnam, according to news press release from the Minister of Information and Communication of Vietnam, which were cited by a lot of news articles recently. And you can see it as the yellow color on the screen. It focuses a lot about the harmful content, inappropriate content, and negative. In general, it's focused a lot of the risk and the negative of TikTok in Vietnam. And this is the newest regulation. And they said this month they will make a comprehensive inspection of TikTok to prevent harmful content and false information. So to understand about the discourse of authority in Vietnam, we use the term of epistemes from the Foucault. And episteme is govern and adjust about behavior from within the operation of the personal expression and thinking. And it depends on the internal construct of power relation acting as a kind of authoritarian discourse. And Vietnamese dominant power system rely on not only on the real things, such as the ideological security officer, the propaganda system, the punishment and prison system, and the legal provision, but also in the absent things, and operates in every individual through a habitual fear or not following orders.
Sorry, Viet, you have 1 minute to wrap up.
Yeah, unconditioned, thank you, a reflex. So we use this idea from Foucault, and we use the Web 2.0 episteme to understand about how Vietnamese authority try to make their discourse in the Web 2.5 episteme. And you can see that Vietnamese social media episteme is very focused on the social media regulation of the authorities, the role of parent in digital setting, and the platform responsibility and accountability. And also we are using user-centric multi-layer approach to understand about the way they're thinking about how they can control the content on the TikTok. And you see the authority and platform layer is a first and second layer in this model. However, as Vincent they said about a predictive algorithmic decision can influence and impact children's future opportunity in education, health, commercial, and social sphere. And about the platform and also about the policy, they fail on the ways they make the digital environment become writings for their children. So based on the three layer, we focus a lot on users.
Sorry, Viet. Sorry, I think this is the time to wrap up. Sorry, we can discuss a bit more in the Q&A session. Sorry about the short time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so now we are moving. Now we're moving to the third presenter. I should apologize first because I don't know how to pronounce your name correctly. I'm so sorry. Gergely LENDVAI from Europe. Their paper will talk about their papers titled "Read the Terms and Conditions If You're Unable to: The Implications of TikTok Users in Among Children from a Legal Perspective, Focusing on Children's Rights, Policy Making, and Regulation Proposals." So floor is yours. And sorry about the mispronunciation of your name. Thank you.
So yes, what I will talk about in this segment is the implication of TikTok usage among children from a legal perspective. As you can see from the title, it's a very provocative title in a way. Read the terms and conditions if you're able to. What I have analyzed during this paper are three main topics. Yes, it works. I'm so sorry. One is that we desperately need a strict concentration on regulation when it comes to TikTok. As someone coming from a strictly legal background, we have identified thus far that TikTok is one of the few platforms which can be considered as a very large online platform, but has extremely and crucial and critical problems with its own policies. Secondly, I've identified a few critical issues when it comes to children's rights and data usage of children. And I propose a regional or international, rather, policymaking innovation or legal novum, Digital Services Act. And I have 3 further recommendations as to how we can improve TikTok, or how TikTok can improve its own policies for it to be a better environment for children. Now, as you can see, the first theme is, why is it crucial to assess TikTok's terms and conditions? Grade E means that there is a legal organization called the Terms of Use. I did not read, which is a very funny name, but it grades from E to A all platform policies with regard to data privacy, data usage, underage protection, and overall understanding or comprehensibility of policies. Now, as you can see, TikTok.
Sorry, Gergely. Sorry to interrupt you. I think your slides aren't changing.
They're not changing. I'm so sorry.
No.
I'll try it this way. So what I was saying, that TikTok has achieved a grade E, which is the worst possible grade to be achieved by any social media platform. And this legal organization based its study on primarily on data privacy. But I propose 3 other subjects, a more holistic view on why is it so problematic that TikTok received a grade E. Even if you're being very conservative, that means that there are over 1 billion monthly active users. Now, monthly active users, as per the legal expression, means that these are the users that engage actively on a platform. That means that they create content, share content, comment, post, whatever. And as per the statistics that were leaked by TikTok, as TikTok do not share statistics, which are mainly based on demographics. And if you're being very conservative, once again, 1/3 of all users are underage, meaning that they are 14 or under. That leads us to the conclusion that we have a crucial assessment to be made when it comes to understanding the legal regulation and legislation with regard to TikTok. That means that we have over 3 million underage users that have no legal protection, or no effective or profound legal protection. And 1/3 subject to be considered is that TikTok is the most found social media platform out there. In April alone, despite the transparency report novum, or the new guidelines, TikTok was fined for $60 million for allowing underage users to use the platform, and they use their data for marketing purposes. In my paper, I proposed 3 main issues. 1, that the current regulation is ineffective. It cannot be enforced correctly and comprehensively. 2, that there's an abundance of inappropriate and illegal content, which is even more crucial when it comes to, for example, as what Catalina proposed, for example, share renting. I've sort of listed a few expressions here, but we can also take into account identity fraud. And that leads us to once again understand this. 3 million underage users are presented inappropriate and illegal content, and the law has yet to find a correct way to assess this problem. And the third point is from TikTok's point of view. What I propose in my research, that TikTok has no active regard for children's rights. We can also talk about, and in the previous panels, I believe that was mainly touched on, that it decreases media literacy heavily, and it was supported by empirical data as well. And the addiction concerns are not assessed by TikTok either. Now that leads us to my first theme, and I'll be very quick. What I used here, the law in this case has a very sort of limited empirical methods, but we can use the Laxalt test or regulation test, which mainly analyzes the language which is used by sort of policies. That means terms and conditions and community guidelines. What I found that it takes 3 hours to read the 2 main documents, and we do not even talk about the data privacy policy. There is an abundance of legal jargon that is even hard for legal scholars to understand, or policymakers, and a plethora of vague terms that are included in the terms and conditions. For example, is it possible for a 14-year-old to understand intellectual property rights or warranties? I do not personally believe so. And it is important to underline as well that we accept and terms that are applied to us, that we should oblige. However, we do not read them, or better, if we read them or not, we do not understand or comprehend them correctly. And it is even more critical when it comes to underage users. That leads us to the second point, which is children's rights and data safety. I've listed a few problems here, and these problems were mentioned before as well. But what I would like to point out is that if we analyze TikTok's policies very profoundly, we can see huge and critical gaps when it comes to contractual law aspects. What I propose here is the house party rules. We can understand in a metaphor how children use TikTok. TikTok is the host of the house party, and children, the users, are the guests. However, it is a crucial violation of contractual law that this horizontal party aspect, where both parties would be able to and are eligible to suggest recommendations or policy-making propositions, in the present case, and in the case of very large online platforms, this is not the case. TikTok can and does change and amend its policies as it wishes to, and users have no right to change, amend, or suggest anything. The only right that they have, essentially, is to leave the platform if they do not wish to agree. And it's even more problematic or controversial if you think of new media phenomena, for example, dark patterns or algorithmic bias. I believe Professor Owens proposed that, I hope I can cite her well, that users, especially underage users, are not being given or not being served that they wish to. And this is even more problematic when we think about the marketing aspects and marketing data usage that TikTok conducts on a regular basis, despite constant warnings from mainly American and UK-based NGOs and policymakers. And that leads us to my third and last point. Will 125 million users enjoy greater legal protection? The European Union in 2022 finally put in force the Digital Services Act. And the Digital Services Act is a novum when it comes to platform regulation. It basically proposes that a greater transparency, which was accentuated during this conference, and a more profound platform regulation is needed.
Sorry to interrupt you. You have a 1 minute time, 1 minute to wrap up.
Sure. Then I will just skip to the two most important parts. So the DSA proposes very strict transparency and safety issues as well as accessibility. What we hope as policymakers is that a more understandable, more accountable TikTok mechanism will be given. But what I also propose, and that leads us to the conclusion of my presentation, that the law cannot act as a sole actor anymore when it comes to regulation. We have to increase parental control, and we have to enforce parental control increase in TikTok. TikTok has to consult with experts. This is what we call in the legal jargon horizontal consultation. And TikTok and policymaking regulators has to promote media literacy for children to understand that the terms that they agree to apply to them, and that these terms are crucial when it comes to using TikTok. That leads to the conclusion of my presentation. And thank you very much for the organizers for the consideration of the time zone difference as well.
No, we thank you for joining us from the different time zone. I really appreciate it. And I think we can discuss a bit more about these practical suggestions that you said in our Q&A session. Now we are moving to our last presenter of today's event, Octavia OLMOS-RODRIGUEZ, who is joining from South America. Their presentation is titled TikTok and the Privacy Rights of Babies and Toddlers. So over to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you. Good morning. Today I will be discussing with you my presentation, TikTok and the Privacy Rights of Babies and Toddlers. Just a little quick content warning. I will be discussing online sexual abuse material, and also I would like to make it clear that I will be anonymizing all of the usernames and the pictures to safeguard the privacy of the children involved. So just a little context. This presentation is framed on my master's dissertation that I am currently conducting. My dissertation is called How Do Parents and Caretaker Social Media Practices Affect the Privacy Rights of Babies and Toddlers. And this is in the social media in TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, but today I will be, of course, sharing with you the TikTok part of it. By baby and toddler, I mean any child between 0 and 3 years of age, and I am focusing on them because of how my other colleagues have shared in previous presentations. There is a different autonomy in younger children. This is especially the case with babies and toddlers. They do not have physical autonomy over their social media presence. Of course, not also cognitive or mental or emotional ability to consent or dissent on being on the platforms. So that is what the focus is on this age range. This is an ongoing qualitative research, and it is also based from the child's rights perspective. So not necessarily from a risks perspective or parental perspective, but on the privacy right of the babies that are featured in the platform. So a quick frame of privacy rights of children in general. So they are protected by the Article 16 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but this is a convention that was published in 1989. So of course the internet was not a problem back then. There has been a general comment on 2021 about how to interpret the convention on a digital environment, but there is no mention on the presence of younger children on platforms by actions of third parties. So there's a lot of protection for the data protection of older children that use actively social media, but not for children that are posted by their parents or other people. There is also not much, not many legislation, international legislation focused on early childhood as from 0 to 3. It is a bit of a neglected age bracket. The sample that I will be analyzing is it's 10 TikTok accounts that fall under this criteria. They have a systematic posting, meaning they post at least 4 times a month, and they have created a business, not a business, but a systematic. This is not just sporadic content. This is a systematic, and it is monetized. It has to be monetized. The focus has to be on the child, meaning that the content would not work or the success of the account is attributed to the child as much as the parent. And they have over 1 million followers. This is just to make sure that we are analyzing a sample that reaches a high exposure for the children. Just a little quantitative data. So the number of videos posted, the account that posted the most videos posted 114 videos. The one that posted the least was 4, and the average among the 10 was 32 videos per month. This was on April 2023, so just the month that passed. So the ongoing findings is an ongoing research, but what we have seen so far is these are the repeated themes that I have been able to see. So there's a lot of content on day in the life of what my baby eats in a day. One of the accounts is exclusively focused on this. You can see the example on the picture. There's a big focus on tantrums and how to deal with tantrums from a respectful parenting or gentle parenting ways, but this does mean that the kid is featured and posted while crying and having an emotional breakdown. There's a lot of playing videos, a lot of challenges and trends and audio, trending audios that they use to create content, a lot of first steps, first words, first visit to the doctor, etc., and a lot of hyperlink content because these accounts almost always have also a social media presence on YouTube and Instagram. So there is a lot of hyperlink between the contents that they publish on other platforms. What are the privacy things that we see? The privacy issues that we can abstract from this content. So there is a lot of nudity, which is problematic. So diaper changing, dressing and undressing, swimming pools. There's a lot of content posted that is, of course, not the parents do not intend anything harmful by it, but it's definitely an infringement of the privacy of the other human being. There's a lot of personal identifiable information, so numbers, names of the family members, names of the friends, etc. Dates of births, a lot of emotionally vulnerable moments that also pose a little threat to the privacy and intimacy, the personality rights of these other human beings. So for example, the tantrums that I already mentioned, I'm crying, and a lot of intimate moments as well. So bad times, doctor's appointment, a lot of moments that we as adults we like to share, to keep private, or to decide if we want them to be exposed. This is content that is being monetized and viralized as well. There's a lot of views. So these are just a couple comments of the interactions of these accounts that we're seeing. So if the baby has a stomach bug, or someone asks for the birthday, it's very easy to share this information. And these elements by themselves do not pose a threat, but when they are aggregated, they create a big digital profile of the child, which is not on their best interest. What are the monetization strategies that I've seen on these 10 accounts? So there's a lot of direct advertisements. For example, there's a lot of, like, at least 20 videos about this Pampers new product, for example. They all portray the babies wearing the diapers. So again, there's a very intimate, private moment that the babies do not have the ability to consent to. They are just featured. Again, these are not, I am not attributing any harmful intentions to the parents. Unfortunately, this is what is happening. And of course, even if they don't mean to harm, showing your baby online while naked can have different impacts. In this case, we're seeing it from how it violates their privacy. So I'm showing, these are the 5 types of monetization strategies that I saw. So there's direct ads and partnerships, as we saw the Pampers one before. There is Amazon storefronts, especially when the families or the accounts, they make merchandising. That's the fifth type of monetization. There's also affiliate links. And there's also Cameo, which is this platform where, there's a platform where you can pay the accounts or celebrities. This is made for celebrities. You can pay the celebrities to send you a personalized video saying, hello, happy birthday, etc. 3 of the accounts that I have analyzed have a profile on Cameo, so that you can pay for their baby or their toddler to send you like a wave or a happy birthday message. There's also a lot of unpaid product placements. So for example, if they're wearing if they're using a particular pram, they would post the brand and say, like, look how much our baby uses the prams or loves the pram. So these are not paid placements, but they do interact with branding. So what do the TikTok guidelines say about the presence of toddlers and baby? There's no mention of babies or toddlers in the guidelines. There's a super strong focus on teens. There's a parental guide to protect the social media practices of the teens, but not the presence of children on the platform by others.
Sorry, Octavia, to interrupt you. You have 1 minute to wrap up.
Perfect, thank you. So there is a substantial regulation on online sexual abuse material, which is, of course, incredibly important. So there are regulations about content being posted of children by third parties, but only for these very extreme circumstances. The community guidelines do say that you must not post any content that can infringe anyone else's rights. So if we strictly view this community guideline, we could argue that we could ban toddlers and babies from the platform, but that would also mean banning a lot of other content. So this is a conversation that needs to be had. What can we do? Just as citizens, I am a teacher, so I think it's incredibly important to raise awareness because this starts from the parents' perspective on what their babies and their toddlers' privacy rights are or aren't. And also as researchers, of course, continue to do research and raise awareness through our platforms. And I don't know how, but I did it in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. That's my email in case you want to connect. And thank you for everything.
Thank you so much. That was the very first 10-minute presentation was wonderful. So now could we please all the panelists back on with their camera, please? Now we have lots of questions. Probably we can start with the first presenter. Although Catalina is unable to join us because she had to leave early for her emergency, but Tom, the co-author of the paper, is here. So now I would love to forward this question to Tom. So thank you for the presentation. I'm interested to know about the terminology and status about the influence, child influence that you have discussed earlier. So how did your case study observation identify as influences as opposed to TikTokers or creators or other similar terms? Does this self-identification matter in terms of the monetizing principles and applications of law that you are considering in the case of the United States and also Israel?
Hi, Jean. Thank you so much for this question, and thank you so much for this event. Regarding your question, I think we can say that the terminology is still quite fluid. And it's sometimes not very detectable from our case studies, as they themselves not necessarily self-identify in their videos as influencers or content creators or TikTokers. So this is why we prefer to try and identify them as being specifically related to the one business model in our overview. So basically using this legal idea of transactions for labeling their videos and not necessarily self-identification. And also I would add that from many research conversations I had with content creators that already facilitated their legacies on other platforms like Instagram, their need to migrate to other platforms like TikTok for maximizing monetization opportunities is often accompanied by their attempts to distance themselves from the term TikToker. So that is a very interesting observation in this sense, and it might be applicable for some of our case studies. But again, we are not on the self-identification, more about like the idea of transactions and how content monetization is being negotiated in their videos. So yeah, thank you for the question.
No, thank you for that wonderful insight that you guys have studied together. Personally, as a person who studied influencer culture, I'd like to extend that question specifically to Octavia's research, because you also mentioned about influencer monetization. So because your study is specifically about toddler and babies who don't have the agency to talk about themselves, I wonder how their parents identify themselves on TikTok. Like, you know, when they promote this content, when they share this content, do they have identify themselves as influencers, or are they trying to promote themselves using their babies and then to leverage their fame or, you know, like via visibility on social media, on TikTok, although regardless of their status, regardless of whether they are influencers or maybe like aspirants or etc.?
Thank you very much. Yes, most of them refer to themselves as content creator, family bloggers, or content creator mom influencers, etc. There is, I have been able to see, although it's not the point of my analysis, I have been able to see that they do consider what they do their job, and there's a lot of duties attributed to it. There's a lot of response to what, so for example, someone will ask in the comments, this is a real example, someone would ask in the comment, can you do the challenge where you give the baby a marshmallow and then you leave and you see if the baby eats it? And they would be like, yeah, sure, we're planning on doing that tomorrow. And then the next day you see the video. So there are schedules for posting, and they definitely see themselves as workers in that sense of this industry, which is very interesting because it sheds a light on what it means for their babies. They are part of the business. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I think your study and also Tom Diven and also Catalina's study really interacts with each other in terms of how that the idea of influence shapes the governance, and also what's the limits, what are the limitations in TikTok's, you know, like a community guidelines in terms of, you know, like presenting babies as an influencer, and also the content. Now we are moving to let's move into the question to Gergely, because I think that terms and conditions is the part that we can extend from our previous conversation about the influences and also the community guidelines. So this is the question asked through my DM. So thank you for the presentation from my research, from their research. They know that the EU the Services Act will impact TikTok significantly. So do you have any sense of how TikTok is adapting to this market specifically, like in the European the market, like how we saw the recent updates to policy and company organization because the American Congress requires?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I'm being part of the DSA group force to which TikTok wishes to participate in a more active way. What we can expect from the Digital Services Act and the EU market is that we will have, as researchers, for example, much more data on how TikTok conducts its or uses or functions its mechanisms. The Digital Services Act specifically stipulates that very large online platforms from now on have to share much more data on how they conduct certain risk assessment or other assessment. So what we can expect is reports from which researchers and policymakers can sort of pull out much more substantial and functional data as before. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that was wonderful question. Wonderful answer. Thank you so much for the insight. The last question, no, it's not actually lots of questions, but the last question I will pick because we are facing the time limits here. So the question is to Viet. It's from the Zoom Q&A session. So given the potential TikTok ban in Vietnam, what are the suggestions for TikTok creators and normal users when using TikTok? And I'd like to slightly adapt this questions to our angle on children. So what will be the impact for the child TikTok users in Vietnam?
There is some discourse about if the TikTok should be banned in Vietnam in media. However, TikTok isn't banned in Vietnam at the moment. But I think children usually using TikTok as a channel for entertainment and also for connecting with their peer. So I think it will be impact to the children in the future if the TikTok event in Vietnam.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. And also we learned a lot from you about the TikTok's regulation and governance things. So we don't have enough time to ask the universal question that I like to ask, but I'm sure that attendees can ask directly their questions to each presenter of today. And thank you so much for joining us from all over the world. I know that this is morning, very early morning, or sometimes it's a very dark night. And so we are very, very grateful for you to join us from all the differences, the time differences, and also the other things that you are doing. So thank you again for joining us. So yes, this is the last of our event for attendees. We are very, very grateful for you to join us from all over the world. I know this is a long day, one full day event. So thanks to you, this event was really successful. Personally, I think this is one of the very, very, very engaging conversation driven the event that we have discussed that we all of us were very excited to learn from all over the world about from the scholars from all over the world. Sorry, I'm babbling a bit because of the jet lag. So again, thank you very much. I think Crystal had something to add for our special thanks to everybody. So over to Crystal.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Once again, we want to acknowledge Emeritus Professor Simon Forrest, CCAT, Social Media Pop Cultures Program, Ms. Linda Durack, Faculty of Humanities, and Adine Kayla for their work. We also want to issue again our special thanks to Catherine Grant, Claire Gartland and Joanna Hook from the TikTok teams based in Dublin, US, and ANZ for being with us, as well as our special panelists, Xin Yu, Andy Zhao, Alicia Rodriguez, and Alex Terry. Now, I've asked Jin to allow me to be a bit sneaky because I realize all our thanks have been very outward directed. But you know, the magic that happens behind the scenes is very much thanks to our internal team as well. So a special thank you to Naomi Robinson. She is our TikTok RA who's been helping us manage the Zoom room very magically. And Kristen Helkett, also our TikTok RA, who has been promoting our event and managing all the queries and live tweets coming in. You may have only seen the faces of Tama, Leva, Gergely, and myself. And you know, we've had the opportunity to take short breaks when we toggle across the three of us. But Naomi and Kristen have been here with full discipline and concentration throughout the whole event, doing troubleshooting, behind the scenes contingencies, all with absolute calm. So we do very much want to acknowledge our early career researchers also for supporting this event. Now, to wrap us up, I'd like to issue us some food for thought arising from today. We've looked so far at TikTok and children, and we've also offered a lot of angles for future and further research. But if it's okay with us, I want to leave us with 3 parting thoughts or provocations, keeping in mind that we're probably going to go off to continue doing research on TikTok and children. We're probably going to see you at our upcoming TikTok events, upcoming in Q3, another one in Q4. So perhaps this will help us along. The first provocation I really want to ask us honestly is, how do we choose our research methods? Across all the papers today, some of us have admitted that it might at times be out of methodological convenience. We have said things in passing like, it just made sense to look at hashtags, or it was easier to focus on just 10 accounts. And sometimes when we sidestep our methodological choices, the relevance and applicability of our findings gets either amplified or diminished. And we really need to question then just how far can our findings apply? Just what cultural context are we really working on? I know I speak for a lot of my colleagues and myself who work in the Asia Pacific that every time we get a peer review report, we are endlessly frustrated when a reviewer says, the title of your paper needs to say XXX in country in the title of the paper. But we never ever see that request for papers done on a sample of college students based in a university in the US. And that can be very frustrating when we think about decolonizing research. My second provocation. Are we really focusing on TikTok on our projects, or is TikTok a mere backdrop? In so much of what we've studied today, we're seeing a lot of issues that have taken place for many decades on many platforms, sometimes pre-social media, sometimes pre-internet. Are we studying old issues in new ways? If yes, and if not, what is so central about TikTok, the platform, the policy, the norms, the users, the culture, to our research? Or is TikTok just something in the backdrop hosting all of these things we're studying? In which case, is this actually research about TikTok? My final provocation asks, whose standpoint are we coming from? What is the default? When we say children, toddlers, babies, where is the nuance in the demographic we're coming at? You know, as part of the ARC Center for the Digital Child, we work in 3 streams, and I'm very honored to be working as associate investigator in a stream called Connected. 2 weeks ago, I got to present a seminar based on research I've completed looking at TikTok and children. And in that, I offered that we probably need a lot more nuance, just basically on definitions. In my further research, I cheekily added that, you know, I've been eyeing different groups of parents I want to study. And right now I'm waiting for a group of Gen Z parents to turn of age. I'm waiting for these parents to turn 18 before I approach them to talk about their children. So technically we're talking about children parenting children here. So in the default, when we say parents, who are we imagining? Even when we talk about children and parenting, for different cultures, the strong presence is actually from guardians, from nannies, from other types of mentors, or in some East Asian migrant and diaspora cultures, it's actually the grandparents who are doing a lot of this intergenerational parenting. So when we think about things like resources, we might not even be asking, is this generationally accessible to those folks who are there? and who happen to be in these grandparent, grandchild celebrity pairings on TikTok. Definitions in terms of who are we looking at? Do we just call all children on TikTok TikTokers? Do we just call all famous children influencers? Does it not make sense for us to divide how we think about children who are memes, children who are viral, the pandemic babies that you see in viral hashtags, but who are not individually popular, the kids who are just appearing every now and then because of influencer parents or TikTok families? So I think it's also important for us to iron out exactly what we mean when we say the child and how they are located there. Those of us who are interested with working in industry or with industry, we should circle back to our conversation from the fireside chat. They work very strictly with definitions and scope. Children doesn't mean much as a vocabulary. Are we talking about minors, under 13s, under 10s, under 18s? Is it children, youth, or young people? And all of these matter when we talk about how the GDPR extends, how the congressional hearing in the US is worried about moral panics, and how we then have these developmentally appropriate implications, policies, and research. The permissibility of our research here. Those are the three things I'd like for you to accept from me as you would as a provocation. Final thanks to all our presenters. There are so many of them who are coming to us from very inconvenient time zones. Here's a fun fact. The most inconvenient times, we had someone presenting at 5 a.m. their time, not fun. We also had someone presenting at 1 a.m. their time. And with such a global group of presenters, many of them are also coming to us jet-lagged, haven't returned from an event. As part of TCRN's ethos, we always want to remain accessible. And in the light of COVID-19 with reduced mobility, we have also committed again to keeping all our events online only. And so with that, we do thank you for obliging us across the time zones. With that, please let me end with some exciting outcomes. So as you know, we try to make all our events coincide with a productive outcome for our junior scholars, as well as to further the agenda and scholarship. So selected papers from this symposium will be published in a peer-reviewed special issue that we will be announcing soon. We've also just closed our inaugural call for TCRN visiting research fellows, and we'll be announcing them in June. Last but not least, our 8th event is an especially exciting one because it's TCRN's first satellite symposia. When we first started this organization in 2020, we were based in Australia, supported by scholars in the APAC region, and it's always been a dream of us to branch out globally. So we onboarded key regional leaders to assist us in leading their conversations in those spaces. And in Q3, we've got our key regional leaders in the UK who will be launching an event called TikTok and Digital Economy. So everything to do with creators, influencers, monetization, ads, partnerships, and the like. At that event, we'll also be announcing our next exciting satellite happening in Q4, again curated by some of our regional leaders. With that, we thank you for joining us. This has been the TikTok and Children's event, co-produced and co-offered to you by the TikTok Cultures Research Network, as well as the ARC Center of Excellence for the Digital Child. You have on screen myself, Prof. Crystal Levitin, Dr. Jin Lee, Research Fellow at the Center, founding member at the network, and Professor Tama Lever, who's one of the key CIs also in the center. Thank you for hanging out with us, and we hope to see you at our next one. Bye.